What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. It's been a really good season so far for hunters. There's been so many buffs and exotic reworks that have made so many different builds stronger than they've ever been. And while this season has certainly catered towards solar and strained builds, I'm about to show you an insanely overpowered Arcstrider build that will put up just as much damage as a Celestial Nighthawk, Pyrogale Gauntlets, or any of the other top tier DPS builds that are currently available. And I mean, let's be honest, I think we're all just getting a little tired of always running solar subclasses. A new update came through earlier this week that provided a buff to heavy grenade launchers, giving them a pretty substantial increase to their overall damage. This increase has given several grenade launchers the ability of surpassing rocket launchers in overall damage, which is something that we haven't seen in several seasons. This change inspired me to brush the dust off of a few items that have been sitting in my vault, and I've been really surprised and extremely delighted to discover that these changes have helped to resurrect an immensely powerful Arcstrider build that at one point was the reigning champion of boss damage. The Star Eater scale has more than proven itself to be an extremely versatile exotic, giving hunters an increase in super damage on any subclass. This has certainly worked out really well on solar builds this season, but in the light of the new changes to grenade launchers, along with some select artifact mods, we're going to be able to absolutely melt any champion or boss in any raid or dungeon. And considering Golden Gun hunters just saw a nerf to their damage potential, the Star Eaters will make for a great substitute for optimal damage. The Star Eaters comes with the intrinsic trait called Feast of Light. This grants bonus super energy on orb collection, and it provides you with a stacking damage bonus that's going to increase the damage of Gathering Storm by as much as 70%. Once your super energy is fully charged, when you collect orbs, you'll get stacks of Feasting Light, and this maxes out at 4 stacks. 1 stack of Feasting Light will give your super a 27% increase in damage. 2 stacks will give a 45% increase. 3 stacks will provide a 62% increase, and 4 stacks will give the maximum of a 70% increase in damage. And because of that, it'll be really important for you to make sure that you have a full stack of Feast of Light before popping your super, especially if you're in the middle of a damage phase. Feast of Light only increases the damage of the Gathering Storm Javelin and its impact. But since the Gathering Storm will continue to inflict damage over time, you'll be able to instantly swap over into your weapon rotation. When you cast your super with a full stack of Feasting Light, you'll receive an overshield, valued at 100 points. And that can be a lifesaver, since you'll be exposed up in the air. Before we dive deeper into the best weapons, specifically grenade launchers, that will work best with the Star Eaters, let's talk about how the rest of this build is set up. Since we get bonus super energy on orb collection, a big focus of this build is orb generation. This is why we're using the Spark of Amplitude fragment, so that when we are amplified, we'll generate orbs when rapidly defeating enemies. And there's several ways that we'll be able to get amplified. We're using the lethal current aspect, so after we perform a dodge, our next melee attack is going to jolt targets. Striking jolted enemies with a melee will also trigger a blinding effect. And since we're using the flow state aspect, defeating jolted targets will make us amplified. When we're amplified, our dodge energy recharges faster, and we'll have increased reload speed on all of our weapons. This grants a 50-point increase to reload speed, and a 200% increase to the recharge rate of our dodge. And when it comes to our choice in dodges, we are using Marksman Dodge, so that we can auto-reload our weapons, and maximize our overall damage. Since defeating jolted targets will cause us to become amplified, it'll be advantageous for us to use weapons that come with Volt Shot. But we can also use fragments, like Spark of Instinct, or Spark of Shock, to cause enemies to become jolted. We could also use the Disorienting Melee option to cause enemies to become jolted when hit by our melee. But I am a rather big fan of the health regeneration and increased melee damage that Combination Blow provides. With survivability in mind, we are also using Spark of Resistance, so that when we are close to at least 3 enemies, we'll have a 25% increase to our damage resistance. Since there's never really a shortage of rank and file enemies, this should be a resistance bonus that we'll be able to maintain almost indefinitely. But when jumping into any in-game level content, like dungeons and raids, you will need to have your character's base resilience as close to 100 as possible. Mobility and strength are also 2 character stats to focus towards, so that we can have the lowest possible cooldown time on both our class ability and our charged melee. When it comes to our armor, we're continuing our focus on orb generation. So we've got helmet siphon mods, heavy-handed, and the Reaper mod. We also want to maximize our damage as much as possible, so we're using weapon surge mods on our boots. And to increase how long those surges last, we've got time dilation on our class item. 3 weapon surges will give you the maximum damage bonus to any given energy type, but we are sticking with 2 so that we can utilize the recuperation boots mod. This will restore our health when collecting an orb, giving us a lot better odds of staying alive, since we'll be generating a ton of orbs. Alright, I think that just about covers everything with our armor and class tree, so let's take a quick look at our artifact, because there are a few mods that we can take advantage of. To start with, Solo Operative is an absolute must anytime you're running an activity solo, and from whence it came, will need to be used when going up against Scorn and taken enemies. This gives us a 5% increase in ability damage when used on those enemies. Wished into Being is going to help us generate additional orbs, as it creates 3 off of any ability final blow, when performed at around the 2/3 mark on our super bar. We do plan on using a couple of different grenade launchers with this build, so using Blast Radius will be a great idea since it'll generate armor charges when rapidly defeating enemies with any heavy or special grenade launcher. And this will work out great to trigger and maintain our weapon surges. So at this point we should have a few extra artifact mods left over, and there's one of 2 directions that we could go. We could equip Strand artifact mods like Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle, grab a few Strand weapons with the Slice weapon trait, and go about our day. Or a better option, we could equip Pillar of Ice, Dragon's Bite, grab us a few Stasis weapons, and reap the benefits of bonus damage. Pillar of Ice will cause frozen enemies to create a Stasis Crystal, and Dragon's Bite will cause enemies to become frozen when breaking their shields with a Stasis weapon. And with Hail the Storm, when frozen enemies or Stasis Crystals are shattered, they'll deal an increased amount of damage and send out small shards of ice that cause nearby targets to become slowed. Frozen enemies who shatter will cause 12% bonus damage, and crystals will cause 28% bonus damage. Since we are on an Arc subclass, we will need to incorporate Stasis weapons into our loadout so that we can cause enemies to become slowed or frozen. Legendary Stasis weapons with Headstone or Chill Clip will be a great option to achieve this, but I honestly like the performance of a few select exotics instead. The Conditional Finality is probably the most popular choice, and a very effective one at that, but it's only ideal in up-close situations. The Wicked Implement or Vergless Curve would be fantastic options if you're playing from a distance, but I found the Cryothesia Sidearm to be an especially powerful option with this build. After each final blow with this sidearm, you're able to load in an Overpowered burst that instantly freezes targets. And once those targets are frozen, we can swap over to our special or heavy weapon and just erase them from existence. And since sidearms can pierce barrier shields this season, this will be a great option against barrier champions. If we are in an activity with someone who is on a solar build, and they're able to give us radiance, we'll want to add in the Torched mod, as it grants a bonus of 5% damage to any enemy who's slowed or frozen, as long as we're radiant, which is going to stack on top of Radiance's 20% damage bonus. And now let's talk about those arc grenade launchers that will be pairing up with the Star Eaters. We're using the Wendigo grenade launcher as our heavy option, and this is our big ticket DPS source outside of the Star Eaters. It comes with explosive light and auto reloading holster. Since spike grenades got nerfed, we're using mini frags instead. With the increase in ammo capacity and damage, the Wendigo has one of the highest damage thresholds of any grenade launcher, and it's going to pair up beautifully with the Star Eaters. When we look at special weapons, we have a few solid options. If we want something for ad clear, the Forbearance is the best choice, but there's also the Iterative Loop, or the Loaded Question, which are extremely efficient towards ad control, and even more so when it comes to damage. If we find ourselves not using an exotic primary, then we could look at using the X-Darius here, which just got buffed, and it's going to help us stay amplified. And it's an auto-reloading, automatic grenade launcher, so it'll make for a great addition to this rotation. And with that, I think we've covered just about everything with this amazing new Arcstrider build, featuring the Wendigo and the Star Eater scale. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this build, the changes to grenade launchers, and everything going on with Guardian games. Let us know down in the comments below. If you want to make a quick copy of today's build, you can easily do so by clicking the Destiny Item Manager link that's in the description below. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian, just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran, just looking for a new home, then be sure to check out the Discord link in the description below, and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.